We welcome you to She Leads the Way, a podcast series by Voluntary Action Network India. Hi everyone, I'm back with another episode of She Leads the Way, a podcast series by VANI. We have with us today Ms. Syeda Hameed ji, a well-known Indian social activist, writer, and a former member of the Planning Commission of India. She is the founder trustee of the Women's Initiative for Peace in South Asia and the Center for Dialogue and Reconciliation, and also a former member of the National Commission for Women. Another feather in her cap is the Padma Shri Award, the fourth highest civilian honor in India, for her contributions to Indian society. It's an absolute honor to be talking to you, Syeda ji. Thank you so much for taking our time.
Welcome, Pallavi, please. It's a pleasure to talk to you. So let's start.
Thank you. Yeah. Sure. So, Syeda ji, can you tell us about your journey and what inspired you to become an advocate for women's rights?
I think what inspired me was that in those days when I was born, I was the fourth girl child to be born. And it was a little bit of a shock that, yet another girl child. But the person who really celebrated my birth was my father. And that's where I realized, where my values come from. So really, I got that from my father. And also through my, much later in life, through my study of the Quran, which is amazingly very much about women's rights, though nobody understands it that way. So my life's mission has been to explain Surah Al-Nisa, which is the second longest surah of the Quran, which is about women. So I got it from my family and I got it from my faith.
Right. So what were the main challenges you faced when you started advocating for women's rights, and how did you overcome them?
I was appointed the member of the National Commission for Women in 1997, and it was a big shock to me because I was never in public life or anything. I was doing my work quietly through my writings. My very first writing was a translation of short stories of Ismat Chugtai, who was a great feminist, as you know. So, but then, having been, Mr. Gujral phoned me and said, would you like to be member of the NCW? And I thought, my God. But after that, I had a very, very amazingly powerful teacher in the chairperson of the NCW. And NCW was a very powerful organization at that time. Very, very powerful, which of course is like a legend, like a history now. So I learned at the knee of my teacher, who was a woman called Mohini Giri. She's still there. She still inspires me. And then she threw me into it wholeheartedly. And I remember the first case I did was in a place called Sudaka in New district, which is so much in the news today.
Right.
Of a case that I thought I had won for the woman, whose name was Mehmoon. I'll never forget it as long as I live. And I thought, oh my God, this is a wonderful thing. Supreme Court ruled in her favor and all that. And ultimately, within a short while, she was shot by her own brother for for dishonoring the family. So, I mean, I can never forget that. It was my very first case. And then, of course, there were, many very important policy changes that we made. And as in both in the National Commission for Women, as well as the National Planning Commission of India. So, highlights. But I just told you my first experience.
Right, sure. So, can you also share with us some significant milestones or achievements from your work in promoting women's rights?
I remember that when at that very inception of sexual harassment in the workplace was started in 1998. And it was some kind of, I can't remember the name of the organization now, but we had commissioned some organization to do a sort of a study. And then the uphill battle of getting, sexual harassment at the workplace, and what happened with the with the wrestlers.
Right.
I mean, today 2023, and we started this in 1998.
Yeah.
So, and then that was one landmark. And I can't sort of tell you about all the landmarks because it'll take away the
Of course.
time of the whole interview. But I remember a very important thing was gender budgeting in the planning
Right.
commission.
Hmm.
Like budgets are made, but what we did was that in every sector, in every segment, to use it from a gender lens. So if
Nice.
it is road and transport, gender lens. If it is
Right.
agriculture, gender lens. If it's so, gender lens was applied everywhere. Energy,
Hmm.
environment. So that was something that we started, and it was a faltering steps, but it had a. I mean, we were in the last plan we did was we started in the 10th plan, and we had made a lot of progress in the 11th plan, and in the 12th plan we were gender, all our colleagues male. I had all male colleagues. I had no woman in the planning commission, so they
Right.
had all started subscribing to the gender lens in every aspect of planning and development, but
Hmm.
that was the end of it. I don't think
Right.
that feminist economist or anything exists today.
Hmm. Right. So, in your opinion, Saida ji, what are the most pressing issues that women face today, both globally and within India?
That's a very, very big question. I, I mean, like if I just have I sort of think about the one thing which cuts across all communities,
Hmm.
which cuts across all religious beliefs, whatever we may say about what the religious texts say. But I
Hmm.
think the biggest issue across the country is the violence against women, and that
Right.
violence is against girl children,
Hmm.
against older women, and there are at times you find the in when you observe life around you, and when you look at the media and all, I think that this violence is something that we have not been able to, whether it's domestic violence or any form of violence. I think the V word
Hmm.
in in how it is integrated into the life of women. It's physical, emotional, psychological in many,
Yeah.
many aspects. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. So, Saida ji, what role do you think education plays in advancing women's rights? And have you been involved in any educational initiatives aimed at empowering women?
I mean, this is also a very obvious and a very good question, because every religious denomination across the world, talks about women's education and importance of
Hmm.
women's education. I come from a family where my great grandfather in 1905 wrote. He was a poet, and he was a feminist poet, and he was also a Maulana, and a great feminist. So he
Hmm.
wrote his first very, very important poem about the status of women in society, and
Hmm.
how men are to be held responsible. He placed men in the dock for depriving women of their rights. So this is my background. So I
Hmm.
feel, what was your question again? I got sidetracked into my great grandfather. Tell me again.
No
Yeah.
problem. So I just wanted to know, what do you think is the role of education in advancing women's rights?
Education. So I'm saying it to you in Urdu because it's a poem in Urdu.
Sure.
He said, "जब तक रहो तुम इल्म दानिश से रहो महरूमियां." Means till you exist, you're not educated. जैसी हो
Okay.
आए बेखबर, वैसी ही जाओ बेखबर. जो इल्म मर्दों के लिए समझा गया आबे हयात. For men, it is education is considered the elixir of life. जो इल्म मर्दों के लिए ठहरा गया, समझा गया आबे हयात, ठहरा तुम्हारे हक में वो जहरे हलाहल सरबत. For you it is poison, what for men was abe hayat, which is the
Hmm.
elixir of life. And now the final couplet,
Hmm.
in which he expresses, he said, "Aata hai waqt insaf ka, time of
Hmm.
judgment is near.
Hmm.
Aata hai waqt insaf ka, nazdeek hai yawmul hisab. The day of judgment has come. मर्दों को देना होगा इन हक तलफियों का वाजवा." Men have to answer for depriving you of rights. 1905, he wrote this. So I
Wow.
think that explains, the importance of education. And
Mm.
people have been aware of it continuously. And yet, like, for example, among the Muslim communities, either it's one issue of hijab, issue of what
Mm.
you see it all around. But basically, the issue is depriving girl, children, and women of the right to education. So
Right.
that's my involvement in it has been completely and totally all my life.
Yeah. So speaking of men and Mark, that what approaches or strategies do you think have been most effective in engaging men and boys as allies in the fight for gender equality?
Engaging men and boys in what?
In the fight for gender equality. How can
Oh,
we engage them in this?
fight for I think that is something which we have not still understood. How
Mm.
to actually how to make it happen, because we
Mm.
have a very patriarchal mindset. So
Mm.
when we bring up our children, and we are all to be blamed for it, I'm also to be blamed for it because I've also brought up children. There is always that that role role of
Mm.
boys and role of girls. I think
Yeah.
this the most effective thing is right from the very beginning of consciousness, to
Mm.
try to mitigate this feeling that this is the role of girls, this is the role, whether it's cooking, cleaning, sewing,
Mm.
farming, whatever it is, to that education, that awareness has to
Mm.
happen preschool. And I think that is something which we have not been able to do at all. Whether you talk of elite society, you talk of middle, the middle society, or you talk of the, people at the lowest rung. This is
Mm.
just not.
Right, right, right. So how do you envision the future of women's rights and gender equality and, in the coming years in India?
It's going to be it's continuing. It will continue to be a big challenge. It will
Yeah.
continue. It will be. We'll have to find new ways, and we'll find that there are new. Uh, the whole. I would say there are new. उसे कहने जाएंगे उस पे तकवार पड़ेंगे. There will be new devices to overthrow those new innovations that we'll make, because the patriarchal mindset is not only the mindset of the men, but it is the patriarchy they pass on to, and the women are becomes patriarchal themselves. So
Good.
I think this is something which the future is certainly, we think it's definitely a better, women have more, I would say, a higher status or more power or more professional. But I think it will continue to be continuing to be a battle, continuing to be new innovations, new techniques, and we'll have to just keep ourselves abreast of these. The new ways, and through media, through social media, through all the devices that have been now, whether it's artificial intelligence or whatever, everything will mitigate. It will actually ensure that women are kept in a certain
Hmm.
position. So we have to use the same tools to ensure that we find our own rights and find our
Hmm.
own space under the sun.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, Saida ji, all these years, have you ever faced any resistance or backlash for your advocacy work?
For my advocacy work,
Yeah,
I have always been actually. I've been sort of even when I was in the planning commission, I was the
hmm,
only woman, and there were 9 men, and I was the only
yeah,
one. So it was very difficult, but I somehow, because of my upbringing, my education, I don't know whether my schooling, my college, whatever, I was able to tactfully find my way through. So I got what I wanted to. I got gender budgeting. I
hmm,
got civil society windows where civil
hmm,
society would come and talk to the greatest, the highest decision makers face to face. But I was able to manage it, and I don't like the use of the word diplomatic, but I have to use it. Diplomatically, I found my way. I did not confront, because confrontation से तो कोई फायदा ही नहीं होता. You have to find your way. And I just thank my God, my inspiration, that I was able to, land on my feet. 10 years in the planning commission with an all-male planning commission was a real challenge.
I know. It sure must have been. So, Syeda ji, from your experience, how can governments, CSOs, and other organizations collaborate more effectively to promote women's participation?
The more effectively with
the government, the NGOs, and the other sectors, how can they collaborate more effectively to promote women's participation? How can they all come together to promote women's participation?
Like they have been doing from the time Veena Mazumdar wrote her Towards Equality, from the time from 1975, when the Beijing conference took place. There has been the civil society has been continuously trying to influence, trying to get gender equality, to get women's rights by collaborating. And I feel we just have to keep going that way. And the best thing is not to be confrontational, to be able to manage. And this is my philosophy. It may not be yours, and someone might think, oh, she's a cop-out. But I think you have to, you have to handle your way carefully. The ultimate goal would be, that goal has to be kept in mind. If you keep antagonizing and you keep turning people off, and it becomes all the more difficult.
Right. So, Syeda ji, what advice would you give to young activists and young children who are, who want to enter this sector and make it as a career choice? What advice would you give to them?
That's a difficult question. I think the young people have, when I go to, say, for example, I recently went to Jantar Mantar for a demonstration, what was happening in Manipur. And later on, I went to Manipur myself. In fact, I'm just at the verge of with my colleagues, bring out a report on the Manipur. There was so many young people, and not only Kukis and Metis, but others, and I feel that they have the young people, or I live in a place which is next to Shaheen Bagh. There were old women, there were young women who were protesting at that time against CAA and NRC. So I feel the youth are, they have, the spark is in them. So, what can we say? We have done our bit and we are still, in the fray. But youth are finding their feet. So I think I would say my duas and my blessings to them.
Thank you so much, Syeda ji. Thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you and learning from your experiences. I'm sure our listeners will be filled with motivation right now.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you so much.
I hope you all had as much fun listening to today's episode as I had recording it. We will be back next week with another remarkable woman leader. Do join us. Till then, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.